Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Sonia Sidhu, Member of Parliament from this riding of Brampton South. Before I begin, I would like to recognize that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. Thank you, the YMCA, for hosting us today. This is a historic day for families in Brampton and across Ontario. Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Premier Ford, Minister Gord, Minister Kara, Minister Hussain, Minister Alghabra, Provincial Ministers, Minister Lecce, and Minister Prabmeet Sarkaria, welcome and thank you for being here with us today for this important announcement. I would also like to recognize my local colleagues, MP Ruby Sahota, Maninder Sidhu, Shafkat Ali, James Maloney, Brian May, Errol Kayabaga, Yara Sachs, Ekwinder Gahir, and of course, I welcome all the families who are very excited to join us today. We are a community of essential workers here in Brampton, and it is important for Bramptonians and all Ontarians to have childcare that meets their needs. That is what we heard loudly from families, experts, business owners, and women. Childcare is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Not only does affordable and high-quality childcare gives our children the best possible start in life, it also ensures that parents, especially mothers, can enter the workforce. I would also like to give my sincere condolences for the 5 lives lost of our Brampton family due to house fire early this morning. My heart goes out to the victims and their families. Along with my colleagues, my thoughts and prayers will always be with them. Now, without delay, it is my honor to introduce someone who always had a strong vision to make life more affordable for families. He worked tirelessly to ensure this day would become a reality. Please welcome our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau.
Thank you, Sonia. It's wonderful to be back in Brampton. But like she mentioned, we're all thinking of those affected by this horrible, heartbreaking, tragic fire on Conestoga Drive. I want to thank first responders for their tireless efforts, and our thoughts are with friends, family, and loved ones, as always. So glad to be here in Brampton today with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Ministers Gould, Hussain, Kara, and Alghabra, and so many members of our outstanding Liberal team here in Ontario. And it's always great to be making big announcements for Ontarian families alongside Premier Ford. Doug, it's so good that we're again together today to make this big announcement. Thank you to Minister Lecce and others as well. We're also joined by Akosua Matthews, the Vice Chair of the YMCA Greater Toronto Board of Directors, and a lot of amazing people from here at the YMCA, to families and kids, to extraordinary childcare advocates and activists who are very, very pleased to see this happening today, as we are all with such great news for families. We know kids deserve the best start in life, and parents, especially moms, shouldn't have to choose between family or a career. A year ago, we said we would build a national system to make childcare more affordable and accessible everywhere in Canada, and today we continue to deliver on that promise. We have reached a multi-year agreement with Ontario that will cut fees by an average of 25%, and parents will start seeing savings across Ontario in the coming weeks, and cut fees in half on average by the end of this year. Savings per child of about, by the end of 2022, of an average of about $6,000 a year. That is real money for families at a time where we know costs of living continue to go up, the situation in Ukraine, the coming out of COVID, the challenges that our economies are facing means this is real money that will stay in the pockets of families this year to help with everything else. We're going to meet our $10 a day target in 4 years, and at the same time create 86,000 new spaces by the end of 2026 across Ontario. I know Ontario parents have been wondering for a while when this was going to happen. Well, we worked hard to get this deal done because you deserve affordable childcare like all Canadian parents. Pour les familles ontariennes, l'entente va faire une vraie différence. C'est plus d'argent dans vos poches pour l'épicerie, pour l'essence. Les Canadiens peuvent compter sur nos gouvernements pour continuer de livrer la marchandise. Now, including Ontario, we've reached childcare agreements with all provinces and territories across the country, which means this means that Canadians, all Canadian families from coast to coast to coast will benefit from quality, early learning, accessible, affordable childcare, which is a historic moment for parents, for kids, for families, but also for businesses across the country. We know the economic growth that is unlocked when moms no longer have to choose between having a family or advancing their career. It's a benefit not just to families, not just to kids, but to all of us. And that's what's so exciting. And I want to thank Deputy Prime Minister Freeland for putting it in last year's budget and making it a reality alongside Ministers Gould and Hussein. Ahmed, you negotiated the first ones. Karina, you brought it home in some very tricky negotiations, but we are here now being able to say that childcare is becoming a reality for all Canadians right across the country. In less than 12 months, we went from not having national childcare towards being on the road toward it. And there's lots of work still to do to make sure we're following up and getting that $10 a day reality within 5 years right across the country, that we're reducing fees, that we're encouraging more early childhood educators to step up with better pay, better supports, better recognition of the extraordinary job they do. But this is the track we are finally on. Accessible, high-quality childcare is key to building a stronger future, a more resilient economy, and growing the middle class. I think of all the families and parents I've met across the country who told me how badly they needed more accessible, more affordable childcare. Many families across the country are already seeing significant savings, and now families in Ontario who are facing extremely high costs will see them very soon. This is real positive change, and our government will keep working to make sure everyone has what they need to succeed. Avec l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, on continue de bâtir une relance économique forte pour tous les Canadiens. En moins de 12 mois, on a signé des ententes avec toutes les provinces et territoires pour des garderies abordables et accessibles à travers le pays et plus de place pour que les familles n'aient pas à attendre aussi longtemps sur des listes d'attente. On va toujours être là pour les familles et faire croître la classe moyenne. Together, we're building a strong future for all Canadians. And I'm now very pleased to pass it over to our friend, Premier Ford. Go.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here in Brampton at the Y. Before I begin, I want to express just how sad I was to learn of the tragic deaths of a family here in Peel, including the loss of 3 precious children. And I just can't imagine the hurt being felt by the family and friends and the entire community. You'll be all in our prayers. On behalf of Minister Lecce, Sakaria, and Bethenfalvy, along with MPP Sandhu, I want to welcome the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and Minister Gould to Brampton, and my good buddy that's been, Gabre, that you've been following me around. I've been following you around for the last week, which is actually great news. Together, we're here to provide real relief to parents and families in Ontario. As we announce an agreement worth over $13 billion to deliver $10 a day childcare to mums and dads across the province. As a government, we're laser focused on finding more ways to keep costs down for Ontario families. Most recently, we did so by eliminating the cost of the license plate stickers while also refunding the fees paid over the past 2 years. And we're eliminating unfair road tolls on Highway 412 and 418. This deal will immediately reduce the cost of childcare in Ontario and provide refunds retroactive to April 1st. As the Prime Minister mentioned, April 1st is 25%, and at the end of the year is another 25%. So really instantly you're seeing the results. This is the next step we're taking to keep costs down for people in our province. I want to thank our federal partners for their collaboration, which was critical in landing this childcare agreement. It's a great deal for Ontario parents and the right deal for Ontarians. It's a deal that provides flexibility in how we allocate federal funding. Flexibility that was critical to making this program work in Ontario. It includes built-in protections for Ontario taxpayers against any shortfalls, including an automatic review in year 3 to make sure the actual costs of the program are funded. And it's a deal that secures out-year funding to underscore the long-term commitment of both governments to the success of this program. It shows what we can accomplish working together. So I want to thank my federal colleagues again for their participation and collaboration. My friends, whether it's through the $10 a day childcare or a provincial childcare tax credit or all-day kindergarten, parents in Ontario now have access to many low-cost options for childcare and can tailor their choices to their own unique needs. As they do, our government will continue fighting to keep costs low for parents and families. Thank you, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to my very good friend, Deputy Premier Chrystia Freeland. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, Premier, for that. And thank you to you and your team for the collaboration that made it possible for us to get this deal done. This is such a great day for Ontario. It is such a great day for Canada. And I do, like the Prime Minister and the Premier, want to say how sad we all are about the tragedy here. Il y a moins d'un an, nous avons présenté un plan visant à faire des services de garde abordables et de qualité une réalité partout au Canada. C'est un plan qui, je le sais, a été salué par beaucoup, mais dont plusieurs étaient légitimement sceptiques. There was some skepticism when we announced our plan in the budget last year. But since then, we've delivered. We have now signed agreements with provinces and territories across this whole country to deliver $10 a day early learning childcare to Canadian parents and families. Today is the culmination of all of that hard work, and I am so glad that Ontario is now part of Canada's national early learning and childcare system. This is truly a historic day. It is the fruit of more than half a century of activism by Canadian feminists who have understood for a really, really long time that early learning and childcare was an essential feminist policy, but also an essential economic policy. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui est possible grâce à leur travail, parce qu'elles se sont battues pour cette cause bien avant qu'elle devienne populaire, et parce qu'elles n'ont jamais basé les bras devant l'adversité. Ce succès aujourd'hui, nous le partageons avec elles. So I'd really like to take a moment today to recognize the so many Canadians over so many years who have made today finally possible. So thank you to the women who have spent decades fighting for early learning and childcare and finally making it a reality. Aux féministes du Québec qui ont ouvert la voie avec les CPE et il y a de cela des années. To Ken Dryden and Paul Martin, who laid the groundwork at the federal level. To the intellectual leaders and activists, Judy LaMarche, Laura Sabia, and Monique Béguin, who convinced the government to establish a Royal Commission on the Status of Women back in 1967. And I do want to remember my own mother, who was inspired by the work of that Royal Commission and fought so hard for early learning and childcare, as did so many Canadian feminists. In the 1960s, about 35% of Canadian women between 25 to 54 were in the labor force. Today, that number is 84%. High quality, $10 a day early learning and childcare will help us do even better. It will mean that women in Canada do not have to choose between their careers and their families. And as Finance Minister, I can tell you, this deal comes at exactly the moment when we need it most. Labor force shortages are a choke point right now for our economy. And affordable early learning and childcare is going to be such an important part of Canada's solution. Affordability is a challenge for so many Canadian families, including families here in Brampton. Affordable early learning and childcare with savings that start immediately is going to be such an important part of the solution to affordability challenges for Canadian families and now for Ontario families. Early learning and childcare is going to help us build an economy and a country that is stronger, that is more prosperous for all Canadians, starting with the very, very youngest. So wonderful to be here. Thank you to everyone who worked on this agreement, including my two amazing colleagues, Ahmed Hussein, who I think is still here with his beautiful, beautiful daughter, and who got the ball rolling. And of course, my absolutely indefatigable colleague, Corinna Gould, who Prime Minister appointed her to this job, and he said, you're going to get it across the finish line, and she did. So thank you so much, Corinna. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thank you so much, Christia. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this morning. Good morning. Bonjour. C'est un plaisir pour moi d'être ici aujourd'hui avec le Premier ministre, la Vice-Première ministre, le Premier ministre Ford, ministre Lecce, ministre Berton-Falvey et mes collègues pour cette annonce historique. If I may just take a moment to recognize Brampton MPs Sonia Sidhu and Ruby Sahota, who have been tenacious advocates on this file since we were elected back in 2015, and so please give them that. I would also like to recognize the leadership of my dear friend, Minister Hussein, who has, everyone knows, led the work alongside Minister Freeland to put this policy together just under a year ago. And what a ways we have come in a year. As the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, it gives me tremendous pride to be able to conclude the Canada-wide early learning and childcare negotiations. With today's announcement, Ontario is now joining all other provinces and territories in Canada to bring affordable, accessible, quality and inclusive childcare to families in this province. And as a mom in Ontario, as a parent with a child in daycare in Ontario, I committed to Ontario families that we would get this agreement done for them. And here we are today, delivering a historic federal investment for families in this province. J'ai déposé mon fils ce matin à la garderie en me rendant à cette annonce, en sachant que les familles de la province bénéficieront bientôt de frais de garde réduits, de plus de places qui répondent aux besoins de la diversité de cette province, y compris pour les familles francophones, les enfants handicapés, et en s'assurant que les personnes à qui nous faisons confiance pour s'occuper de nos enfants sont mieux payées, davantage reconnues et ont un meilleur accès au développement professionnel. As my colleague MP Sidhu mentioned, childcare is not a luxury. It is a necessity. Childcare advocates and the women's movement have been calling for this day for over 50 years. And I couldn't be more humbled to stand here before those trailblazers to deliver this transformative social and economic policy that will change the trajectory of our country for the better for generations to come. Comme la ministre Freeland aime à dire, et comme elle a dit aujourd'hui, il s'agit d'une politique économique féministe, mais aussi de la meilleure politique économique qui soit. To those of you, looking at you over here, who have been beating this drum for decades, thank you. Today would not have happened without your tenacity, your persistence, your commitment. We stand on your shoulders. But I'm sorry to say your work is not over. We need your energy, your dynamism, your commitment to continue to guide us through the rollout and implementation of this new childcare system from coast to coast to coast. And today is an exciting new step here in the province of Ontario. Grâce à l'entente d'aujourd'hui qui prévoit 10,2 milliards de dollars de 2021 à 2026, les familles de la province auront accès à des services de garde d'enfants abordables, de qualité, inclusif et accessible. Nous franchissons aujourd'hui une étape importante. C'est important pour nos enfants, pour nos familles, surtout pour les femmes, ainsi que pour notre économie. Parents in the province currently pay on average $46 a day for childcare. This agreement, as the Premier mentioned, will reduce licensed childcare fees for children aged 0 to 5 by 25% as of April 1st, saving Ontario families an average of about $2,200 per child. And by the end of the year, the average fee for licensed childcare, including before and after school care for 4- and 5-year-olds, will be reduced by 50%. This means families in Ontario could save an average of $6,000. Imaginons ce que cela représente pour chaque famille. And we also know that while reducing fees is important, so too is growing the system. Through this agreement, Ontario has committed to increasing the number of regulated spaces by 86,000 over the next 4 years. I've heard from too many parents, particularly mothers, who have struggled with wait lists and finding a space before returning to work. For this Canada-wide system to work, we need to grow the number of spaces available, and we are committed to working with Ontario to do just that. And we are getting to work immediately on space creation, and this agreement includes commitments on inclusion to ensure every child, including children with disabilities, Indigenous children, and Francophone children, have access to affordable, high-quality childcare. And finally, I would like to take a moment to talk to the early learning and childcare workforce. Every day that I drop my son off at daycare, I am grateful to know he is well-loved, learning, and safe. This is only possible because of the thousands of workers across this province that care for our children. The pandemic showed us that childcare workers are essential workers. What many businesses and organizations took for granted before the pandemic All of society now knows that without childcare, the economy does not function. And there is no childcare without the loving, talented, and dedicated childcare workforce. As both a mom and a minister, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to every single childcare worker in this province. You are, each of you, heroes. You kept the economy going, and quite frankly, you kept a lot of parents going throughout the pandemic. And this agreement includes a wage grid for childcare workers, as well as support to attract and retain childcare workers to the profession. Childcare workers are the very heart of the system. And while there's still more work to be done, this agreement is a first step to truly recognizing and valuing the work you do. En terminant, nous ne serions pas ici aujourd'hui sans le travail acharné des représentants du gouvernement, tant à Ottawa qu'à Queen's Park. Ils ont travaillé très fort au cours des derniers mois pour nous permettre d'en arriver là. Je tiens à tous les remercier pour leur travail et leur dévouement en notre nom. Je sais ce que vous avez accompli pour les familles en Ontario. Je vous en suis profondément reconnaissante. And to the families of Ontario, this is not a childcare deal for governments. It's a deal for you, for your kids, for your future. And the future looks a little brighter today. Before I turn it over to my friend Minister Lecce to say a few words, I would just like to extend my thanks to him. We spent many late nights on the phone working through this agreement, and I'm glad that we're here today together. Stephen, thank you for all that you did to get this done. It was a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to working with you as we advance this childcare initiative for the people of Ontario. Congratulations, and over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Minister Gold. It is absolutely mutual. We're so grateful, and we're so excited to be here today with you all. To our host at the YMCA, thank you. And of course, to our federal colleagues, including Brampton's finest, Prabh Sakaria, as well as Amarjot Sandhu, thank you for hosting us here today. We committed to Ontario families to stand strong and defend Ontario's interests, to ensure we deliver the best possible deal for you, Ontario's moms and dads. Today, we can say with sincerity that we have delivered a deal with more investment, an additional year of funding, and maximum flexibility to support parents, regardless of how they choose to raise their children. This historic agreement will lower fees. Critical to this deal is the fact that parents will pay less, on average $2,100 less this calendar year alone. This is so important so that we can ensure women can fully enter the workforce by removing the barriers and the financial disincentives that have kept many parents home. Ontario's deal recognizes our unique position of having among the highest childcare fees and the largest childcare age population in Canada. Under our Premier's leadership, Ontario was able to achieve what no other province was able to do in their agreements with Canada. For example, while other provinces and territories have been limited to a 5-year agreement of funding, we were able, in collaboration with the federal government, to secure a 6th year. We have roughly, on average, $600 million more per year than what was originally offered. While other provinces and territories were held to exclusive focus on not-for-profit childcare for funding new spaces, we were able to secure some flexibility to protect parental choice, including for those small business owners, often women-owned enterprises. Starting immediately, Ontario families with children 5 years of age and younger in Ontario and participating licensed childcare will begin to save money. And as a first step, Ontario will reduce fees by up to 25% retroactive to April 1st. We will also freeze fees over this period of time. At the end of December, parents will realize more savings, where we will deliver 50% savings for parents on average. And as noted, that's a savings of about $6,300 per year for parents. This will represent a combined savings of over $1 billion in childcare costs for Ontario families this year alone. Now, for an average parent today, for example, this will save $2,100 per space between April and December. In September of 2024, families will see further fee reductions in childcare costs, with a final reduction to $10 a day on average by September 2025. For parents across the province, this means money in the bank, and the savings start April 1st. While costs remain the #1 challenge for many, we know a lack of access to childcare spaces remains a frustrating reality for parents. And so this deal will support the creation of 86,000 new childcare spaces for children ages 5 and younger. This is in addition to our government's $1 billion provincial investment to create 30,000 childcare spaces over 5 years within our schools. And when you think about it, Ontario will uniquely benefit from these 3 advantages. One, we will maintain the Ontario Child Care Tax Credit, a tax credit that supports all children and respects all parents, regardless of how they choose to raise their kids. That's about 300,000 families saving about $1,250 per child per year on average. Second is we're going to continue to fully fund our all-day junior and senior kindergarten program, providing all-day educationally stimulating learning for 4- and 5-year-olds, another advantage that is shared with only one other province in Canada. And we'll be able now, under this deal with Canada, to offer affordable childcare, and we will get to $10 no later than 2025. Together, through the Ontario Child Care Tax Credit, childcare fees that are significantly reduced, and our all-day kindergarten program, Ontario parents are provided with a full array of options, benefits, and supports for early years and childcare in this country. In order to protect those options, we need to ensure we retain a motivated and highly skilled and qualified workforce. And on this note, I want to echo the message that Karina shared, a message of thanks to our early childhood educators for the dedication and for working straight through this pandemic. That's why Ontario's agreement will focus on recruitment and the retention of early childhood educators, with immediate improvements for them in this deal. Finally, as we look forward, Canada and Ontario will monitor the costs of this new system with a unique review mechanism designed to protect Ontario taxpayers should fiscal gaps emerge down the road. This deal is putting money in your pockets. This is about respecting parents' choice, and it benefits from a longer period that will continue to save families their hard-earned dollars for that additional year. This is what getting it done looks like. This is what collaboration looks like. And this is what putting parents first looks like. A deal that saves them thousands of dollars this year and every year over the course of this deal, getting to $10 on average in 2025. Friends, after decades of talk, your government is getting the job done, and we can finally say that together, childcare will be affordable, it will be accessible, it will retain the high quality that you, Ontario parents, and your kids deserve. Thank you. And I'd now like to turn it over to the Vice Chair of the YMCA GTA, Akosa Matthews, for a few remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Prime Minister, Premier, Ministers, and other welcome guests. We are so fortunate to have you here today at the YMCA of Greater Toronto. My name is Akosa Matthews, and I'm the Vice Chair of our Board of Directors. Now, before I begin, I wanted to say that here at the Y, we've been heartbroken to hear about the tragic loss of life here in Brampton, and I'm hoping that this family gets all the supports that they need. Childcare is an essential service. It is essential to helping women participate fully in our economy. It is essential to building stronger, more cohesive communities. It is essential to families of all sorts and sizes. And it is essential to the education, stimulation, and quality care of our youngest citizens. We know all this because the YMCA is the province's largest not-for-profit childcare provider. 1/5 of Ontario's licensed childcare services are delivered through YMCA centres, just like this one here in Brampton. 300 in total across the GTA, supporting tens of thousands of children, and employing thousands of educators, most of them women. The essential fact about high-quality, licensed childcare in this city, this province, and in this country is that we need more of it, much more. I know that as someone who serves at the YMCA, and I know that as a working mom. That is why we are so excited to host this event here today, and that is why we applaud both the federal and provincial levels of government for reaching this agreement here today, for working together, for investing more, and for doing more in the shared interest of families. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for this agreement. I also want to thank all the childcare educators across Ontario who have hoped for this day and who have worked for this day. And I want to promise you that the YMCA of Greater Toronto will do everything possible to fulfill the potential of this new agreement and to extend the reach of affordable, licensed childcare services to the children and families that need it most. Thank you, and miigwech.
Hello again, everyone, and a warm welcome to Brampton. Today, we take another major step toward making life more affordable. There's a reason why Brampton was chosen as a place to make this landmark announcement. Brampton represents so much of what is good about Ontario. But the struggles of unaffordable childcare felt here are the very same ones felt by families in Hamilton, Kenora, and everywhere in between. Premier Ford and Minister Lecce have worked tirelessly to get the best deal for Ontario, one that will serve the needs of vibrant communities like Brampton in a growing province like Ontario. Premier, on behalf of Ontario families, thank you for your strong leadership and for fighting for and delivering the best childcare deal for our province. From day one, you've been Ontario's champion, and our province is stronger for it. And thank you to the Prime Minister and our federal partners for helping to make this happen. This plan is evidence of the power of working together across governments to solve problems and find solutions. And we'll get the job done. Thank you very much for joining us here today. And I would now like to invite Ministers Gold and Lecce to sign the deal, accompanied by Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford.
With the first question, please.
Ian Fitzpatrick from CBC News. Premier Ford, please. You had said you wouldn't sign a deal unless it was a good deal for Ontario, and if it took longer to get that deal, so be it. So can you tell us what exactly makes this deal so good? You had said your government wanted some guarantees for funding beyond 5 years. You wanted to be compensated for offering full-day kindergarten. So tell us exactly what we got on those 2 points, if you could, and again, tell Ontario parents what was so worth waiting for.
Well, what I will tell you, this is a fantastic day. It's not about the federal government or provincial government. It's about parents getting $10 a day childcare, that they're going to see a savings immediately on April 1st and again on the end of the year to 50%. But, you know, Ontario is unique when it came to childcare, and I'm very happy that the federal government saw that and was willing to sit down and take the time to get it right. It's easy for any side to go out and sign a deal for the sake of signing it. As I said over and over again, let's get a deal that we can meet the $10 a day childcare. That's flexibility, which again, I appreciate the federal government allowing us the flexibility, and the sustainability. So we have the sustainability, we have the flexibility, and we're good to go.
Okay, so what happens in year 7 then, for example, and on the rebates, can you explain why they're retroactive only to April 1st, not January 1st, for example, and how are parents going to get that cash back in their pockets? Is it going to be a check cut by you and your provincial government or by the daycare provider? How do they get that money back?
Well, what I'll do is I'll pass the small, well, you know, the little into the weeds over to Minister Lecce. He's been working on it, and I got to give Minister Gould and Minister Lecce, you know, this was one of the largest deals that we've ever done. And I always say, isn't it amazing when you work together with the federal government and the municipal government, not in this case municipal, yeah, well, it is municipal as well, what we can do. And you saw what we were able to do when we went to Windsor. You saw what we're able to do in the largest transit project in North America, $28 billion deal. And along with the green steel, so on and so forth. My point is we're working incredibly well with the federal government. I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and the ministers moving this forward. Go ahead, Minister.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, with respect to the savings, we have in this agreement with Canada guaranteed a 25% on average reduction, which will be retroactive to April 1st. Individual operators will have to enroll in the program, but parents themselves will not. They will receive an automatic benefit and savings on a monthly basis. Operators will make that decision. They have to do so before September. And within 60 days of that decision, the expectation, part of this agreement, it codifies it, that those savings would be trickled down to the parent, to the consumer. And that will benefit about 25% upfront. If an operator takes a bit of time to do that, for example, 2 months, we're going to cut a retroactive payment to them through the operator directly for families to save roughly $2,000 this calendar year in the remaining months between April and December. In December, the next 25% will be achieved, or rather the 50% will be achieved at that point. And that saves on average per year about $6,000. And we believe that type of savings will make a significant difference in the life of a parent who pays some of the most expensive childcare in Canada here in Ontario. So this is a Made in Ontario solution. It's sustainable fiscally. It has the funding to deliver it as we achieve the federal mandate of $10 by 2025.
Next question.
Thank you.
OK. Stella Dupuis de Radio-Canada. Ma question est pour M. Trudeau et ou Mme Gould. Est-ce qu'il y a des clauses dans l'entente pour un nombre de places dédiées aux enfants francophones? Et comment expliquez-vous que les négociations aient pris autant de temps et traîné aussi longtemps?
Merci pour la question. Tout d'abord, on reconnaît qu'à travers le pays, différentes provinces et territoires, depuis des années, ont fait des efforts pour répondre aux besoins des familles dans leur juridiction. Et d'ailleurs, il y a plusieurs années, le gouvernement fédéral a envoyé des milliards de dollars dans des ententes avec les provinces pour commencer le partenariat en garderie petite enfance. Et donc, on est en train de bâtir sur des systèmes qui sont déjà existants à travers le pays, mais qui sont différents. Et donc, on a eu de la flexibilité qui reconnaissait les particularités, les besoins de chaque province en faisant ces négociations. Mais, pour être très clair, on a toujours mis les familles au centre de ce qu'on faisait. On s'attendait, par exemple, que dans la première année, on coupe de 50% les coûts pour les familles en garderie. On s'assure d'arriver aux 10 $ par jour en dedans de 5 ans, qu'on s'assure de bien payer les éducatrices et éducateurs de petite enfance et qu'on crée des places. On parle de 86 000 places en garderie en Ontario qu'on va créer. Mais en plus de ça, dans les accords qu'on a signés, il y a une reconnaissance des besoins de minorités linguistiques d'assurer les services de garde en français dans les communautés où il y a une proportion importante d'enfants francophones, de communautés francophones. On a assuré un certain niveau d'aide pour les enfants souffrant des handicaps, par exemple. On a mis à l'intérieur de l'accord des exigences par rapport aux communautés avec des besoins particuliers et ça fait partie de l'accord avec l'Ontario et de tous les accords qu'on a signés à travers le pays.
Suivi?
Oui, my second question, donc ma deuxième question, toujours pour M. Trudeau. Demain, vous présentez votre plan pour atteindre les cibles de réduction de GES. Est-ce que le contexte mondial, l'inflation, l'Ukraine, vont ralentir le Canada dans l'atteinte des cibles de réduction et peut-être vous forcer à revoir vos ambitions?
Je pense que c'est une question que tout le monde est en train de se poser. Est-ce que la guerre en Ukraine, est-ce que la crise énergétique lancée par la Russie va nous ralentir dans notre but d'atteindre la carboneutralité en 2050 ou même d'atteindre nos cibles de 2030? Et je peux vous dire qu'au contraire, ça nous donne la motivation et l'encouragement d'aller à la place plus vite et d'être plus ferme sur le besoin d'avoir cette transition énergétique pour non seulement plus être dépendant du pétrole et du gaz, mais en particulier de ne plus être dépendant en Europe et ailleurs du pétrole et du gaz russe. C'est pour ça que dans le plan que j'ai très hâte de présenter demain à Vancouver, les Canadiens vont voir un plan qui demeure extrêmement ambitieux pour réduire nos émissions de gaz à effet de serre, tout en s'assurant la transition de l'appui pour les travailleurs et le contexte mondial où on a besoin d'accélérer cette transition un peu partout, avec des années difficiles qui s'en viennent à cause de la décision de Vladimir Poutine d'envahir de façon illégale l'Ukraine et de déstabiliser non seulement l'énergie dans le monde, mais la situation de sécurité alimentaire.
Maybe if you could just answer in English as well, quickly.
A lot of people are wondering what the impact of the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis that is resulting from Vladimir Putin's decision to invade a sovereign neighboring country, and the resolve of the world to reduce its dependency on Russian oil and gas is morphing into a heightened urgency for the transformation of our energy mix towards lower carbon emissions in our energies in the coming years. That's why this is a moment, whether I was 2 weeks ago in Europe talking very directly with Chancellor Scholz of Germany about our partnerships on hydrogen, whether it's the works we're doing around critical minerals here in Ontario and elsewhere across the country, there is a real opportunity to understand that Vladimir Putin's terrible, mistaken decision to invade a peaceful neighboring country is providing the world, yes, with hardship right now around energy prices, around food insecurity, but also all the more motivation to support each other, to support families as we reduce our dependency on oil and gas altogether and build strong economies and strong environmental economy for the future.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Matthew Bingley, Global News. We've heard already quite a few times now that Ontario has received a better deal than other provinces. To other premiers who may be raising their eyebrows, did they get a bad deal, and would you extend some of the concessions to those who have already signed on?
We had some very, very clear expectations for all provinces. $10 a day, 50% reduction in the first year, wage grid to support early childhood educators to the level that they needed to be supported, and creation of spaces, especially in the nonprofit sector. Every single province had to meet those thresholds in order to get the allocation of federal funding that was, from the very beginning, distributed across the country. Ontario's allocation was $10.2 billion as we calculated it almost a year ago, and that's exactly what this deal is. But the focus that we had is respecting and understanding that every province has a different system coming into this deal and requires different levels of flexibilities. And different provinces got different levels of flexibility. Ontario, for example, wanted in writing the deal for the 6th year, and we were happy to sign that because, as you may remember, when we announced this childcare funding, it was permanent funding. So all the other provinces also know they get funding on the 6th year, on the 7th year, on the 10th year, on the 20th year. God willing, governments continue to believe in childcare into the future, but I know that parents and activists will make sure they are. That is set out in the framework. So yes, different provinces had different priorities within that, but families in Ontario can know that they've got the same quality of deal that families who signed months ago in other parts of the country, and families in other parts of the country can know that they're getting the same quality of childcare that we just signed with in Ontario.
Follow-up.
Is for Minister Lecce, and if Minister Gould could also weigh in. I'm just wondering about the 86,000 spaces. What benchmarks, you mentioned 4 years, but what benchmarks do you have for an expectation for accountability in creating those spaces in a timely manner? And Minister Gould, if you could just answer what expectations your government has to ensure that those are actually created in that speed.
Thank you. In Ontario, we allocate $1 billion per annum to build 30,000 childcare spaces over the next 5 years. We are doing that aggressively on pace. In fact, 22,000 of which have already been approved or in the pipeline and are benefiting families in Brampton across Ontario. That has been a pre-existing priority of this government, but this deal further builds upon that because we recognize as we decrease costs for families, the demand will rise. And therefore, there needs to be space allocation guaranteed through this agreement. And so this agreement confirms the creation and funding on the capital side of 86,000 spaces that can be created between now and then. Of course, starting in 2019 is the starting point of that. The point is that every single year we anticipate growth in space allocation. The agreement speaks to the accountability associated with opening up those spaces in urban and rural communities across Ontario. It's going to provide a massive level of increase because in Brampton, as was reported some years ago in 2018, for every one childcare space, there's 3 kids that exist under the age of 5. There's a deficit of spaces. And so we know that already the challenge exists. It'll be exacerbated over time, which is precisely why the government of Canada and Ontario have agreed to an 86,000 space increase over the next 5 years. And that's going to help us increase the access, decrease the costs, and make life so much more affordable for moms and dads in Ontario.
Next question.
Great, thank you for the question. And as I said in my remarks, this system is only going to be successful if we can build enough spaces. And as Minister Lecce put it very well, it's 86,000 new spaces. My understanding is that by the end of 2023, about 40,000 of those are to come online. by March 31st of 2026. It'll be over 71,000, and then by December of 2026, it will reach that 86,000 mark. And what is important in all of the agreements that we signed across the country, including here in Ontario, is that there is very clear data and reporting mechanisms. Canada and Ontario and Canada and every province and territory across the country have committed to that transparent dialogue, sharing of information to ensure that we are reaching those benchmarks, and then to troubleshoot together if there are issues that are presented, but there are clear accountability mechanisms in this agreement, as in all the agreements. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hi, Heather Wright, CTV News. Sort of keeping with the space theme, obviously those spaces that have been promised can't be built or created overnight, and there are thousands of families in the province whose arrangements might not include, licensed childcare. They might be in home care or nannies or other alternative arrangements. Will there be any relief for those families who don't yet have their kids in childcare but are spending thousands of dollars nevertheless to care for their kids?
Thank you for the question. So this does include licensed home care as well as licensed childcare as we know it. That is important. That's going to help liberalize access to more families who need it. But I think the basis of your question is very important, because we accept in our government that there are inherent costs to raise a child, regardless of how you choose to raise a child. It may be some staying with the in-laws, or it may be folks heading off to the local YMCA in Brampton that is spectacular at offering brilliant services. Regardless of your choice in Ontario, specific to this province, we have support for you. There's three components that I think are critical. The first of which is, of course, that for children 4 and 5, they have universal free access to all-day kindergarten. I believe beyond Nova Scotia, we are the only province to offer that, and an incredibly important program, educationally stimulating program for kids. The second support we're extending is through the continuation of the Ontario Child Care Tax Credit, which provides up to 75% of eligible expenses for roughly 300,000 people. That's $450 million this year and every year in the pockets of parents. That's going to continue. And those are expenses that are, perhaps sometimes often outside the scope of childcare at local YMCA. It's for other costs that parents incur. And finally, this deal for those families that have their kids at a licensed daycare or home care, that they too are going to have access to now what is an increasingly more affordable system, starting this year at 50% reduction on average, declining over time to 2025, where it gets to $10 on average. So all of this together is providing choice and, more importantly, providing financial relief for working people.
And finally, if there is a shortfall, a gap between that when this deal is revisited, is there a cap in terms of what the federal government will cover, or is that an unlimited number?
We made a commitment to make sure that families right across the country have affordable, $10 a day, high-quality childcare spaces. And I will remind folks, especially those who've been working on childcare a long time, that's not easy to do. To create spaces, well, that can be done. But creating high-quality spaces, ooh, that's a bigger challenge. And then making those high-quality spaces that we've created affordable at $10 a day, that's even harder. So this is a very difficult thing that we are all embarking on, but with a firm commitment to get it done. That's why the federal government put forward historic amounts in last year's budget to allow us to get to this point. That's why the robust conversations with Ontario, with all provinces and territories, have been so important in designing systems that would work. And we've allocated significant amount of funds together for this. But I think one of the things that hasn't been allocated in that frame is the benefits that are going to come in to governments as we see increases in the workforce, as productivity goes up, as families that no longer have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on the equivalent of a second mortgage as their kids go through childcare, can instead invest them in things that matter to them. We are partners in this, and our partnership is focused on the fact that every family deserves affordable, high-quality childcare across the country. And as of today, we can say every family in this country will now, as we build it in the coming years, as we expand on what we already have, will have access to it, and it will make a huge difference, not just in the lives of families today, saving thousands of dollars this year, but in all families to come, to have this system that gets the very best for our kids, for family choices, and for the future. And every step of the way, we will make sure we're there to make sure it's working for families right across the country.
Next question.
Hi, Jamie Goodfreund from CB24. Just touching upon the 86,000 spaces a little bit more. For many families in Ontario who've been waiting a year or so on these wait lists, many of them are in underserved, Indigenous, and racialized communities. And out of these thousands of spaces, I'm curious, what is the provincial government going to do to target to get those spaces to those families that need it most in a timely manner?
Well, what we're going to do is make sure we focus on those areas of need, high priority neighborhoods, Indigenous communities, work with the communities to get it going as quickly as possible. There is going to be places too that we have to put infrastructure funds into adding on to schools and hopefully building more YMCAs, because I love YMCAs and they do tremendous work. So make sure we reach out and continue building that, the YMCAs. And do you know what the one part is absolutely critical? Getting the ECEs, getting more people willing to work in early childhood education. And to be frank, they deserve more money. That's my opinion. We're going to work on that. And they deserve more money.
Part of the plan indicates that it's going to improve compensation for our ECEs. Is there a specific number? Is there a specific target that they can expect? But it's only for 5 years to 6 to 12. What about for 5 and under as well?
Well, we'll make sure everyone's whole, right, from 5 and under and up to 12. You know, the job is very, very difficult. It's a job I wouldn't be able to do. You know, they have a special skill set and they deserve to get paid appropriately. And we'll work as quickly as possible and collaborate with stakeholders.
We have time for one last question.
Suitor with Canadian Press, following up on the wage question. Under this plan, we're hearing that the minimum wage for ECEs is going to be set at 18 an hour, but they've been calling for 25. And under this plan, they're not going to see $25 an hour for many years. So how can you expect to attract and retain people to this workforce and expand it if it's not the wage they're asking for?
Well, again, nothing's carved in stone. We want to sit down and we see inflation happening. People need more money to survive, put food on the table, to pay their rent. This also gives an opportunity for more people to get in the workforce. We're short 338,000 people to fill the existing jobs that are there. So we're going to work collaboratively with the stakeholders, but I always am a strong believer people have to be treated fairly. And our government is about making sure people are treated fairly, and we'll make sure we work hand in hand with them. Thank you.
And, just on the timing, people are going to start getting the rebates in the middle of the provincial election campaign. Is the timing a coincidence there?
Which rebates? The sticker rebates or rebates for? There's a few rebates going around.
There's a few on the go.
We
but
just
I mean,
believe in
applies to both, I guess.
Well,
The announcement.
you know, but no, you know, we've worked months, you know, hand in hand with the federal government, and I just got to thank them again. I don't remember. I've been in politics a long time, similar to the Prime Minister and the rest of these folks. Two governments working side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Forget the political stripes. We're all federally and provincially, municipally working for the people. That's why we're here, to make things better. And with the partnership, as I mentioned, no matter if it's Windsor or batteries or critical minerals or making green steel in Dofasco or building the largest transit project in North America, I couldn't do that without the great collaboration with the federal government. It's all about building relationships, and we've built up a great relationship, and you know, I have a great relationship with the PM, and I have a great relationship with Chrystia Freeland. She's a She's wonderful. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Concludes the
Thank
press
you.
conference for today. Merci, ça met fin à la conférence de presse d'aujourd'hui.